My name is Jess, and today I'm going to talk about the differences between the Paintbrush tool and the Blob Brush tool in Adobe Illustrator. These tools can be found in your Illustrator toolbar, and they're both in the same place. If you right-click on the icon, you can switch between them. They have the same shortcut on both PC and Mac, B for the Paintbrush tool and Shift-B for the Blob Brush. I'm going to demonstrate how I use both tools in an illustration. First, I start with the Paintbrush tool, which I use to create the outline of my illustration. Personally, I don't draw an illustration from scratch using my tablet, as I find it easier and quicker to trace a reference. Today I'm using a pencil sketch that I've drawn by hand and scanned. I place the image on the canvas, name the layer it's on, and lock it. Then I create a new layer for my outline and name that. To create a more natural line in Illustrator, you can adjust the brush to respond to the pressure you applied to your tablet's stylus. If you don't see the brush panel, click Window, then Brushes. Click the three little lines in the corner of the brush panel to bring up the brush options, then click New Brush and select Calligraphic Brush. You can adjust the angle and roundness if you like, but I usually just change the size to 5 point, select Pressure from the drop-down, and change the variation to 5 point. The variation refers to how much the thickness of your line will vary when you apply pressure to your tablet stylus. The maximum variation you can select will be the same as the point size of your brush. So for example, if you choose to use a 3-point brush, you can only select up to 3-point variation. However, the size of the brush you select isn't that important, as I'll demonstrate in a minute. It's more important that you select the maximum variation available. Next, I start tracing my reference on my new outline layer. Make sure that you're only using a colour in the outline square and not the fill square. I use my tablet's touch ring to adjust the brush size as I like, and you can see that the variation adjusts with it. When you use the Paintbrush tool, it creates a line just like using the pen tool, with anchor points that are adjustable. This is really handy if you've drawn a line that is just a little bit off what you'd like, because you can go in and adjust the anchor points and their handles so you can get just the right curve or detail that you need. Now that I've finished the outline, let me explain why you should only use the Paintbrush tool for line work. To colour in your illustration, you should use the Blob Brush tool. As a side tip here, if you've drawn a line that connects all the way around with the Paintbrush tool, similar to a pen tool shape, you can also easily colour this by just selecting a fill colour or gradient for it. So now I'm going to turn off my reference layer and create a new layer just above it and under the outline layer, and name it Colour. Now you can see if I use the Paintbrush tool to add colour on this layer, it appears to work, but on closer inspection, it's a big mess of lines with anchor points. We don't want this because it will be difficult if we need to edit the colour. That's why the Blob Brush is a better tool for this job. When you select the Blob Brush tool, you'll have to go into your brush options again and make another calligraphic brush for it. Just make the same selections as you did for the Paintbrush. Making a brush that responds to your tablet pressure isn't as important for colour as it is for line work, but it does make it easier if you're colouring in small areas or corners. This time, make sure you only have colour in the fill square and not the outline square. It actually doesn't matter here if you're using a fill colour or an outline colour, as the result from the Blob Brush will be the same. Just make sure only one of them has a swatch, not both. You can see when I use the Blob Brush to colour an area instead of the Paintbrush, it creates a blobby shape instead of lines, with the anchor points around the edges. You can use these anchor points to adjust the shape of what you've painted, but I usually find it easier to use the eraser tool to edit it. You can also use gradient color with the Blob Brush. You can select a gradient color from either your gradient panel or the swatches panel. If you can't see these panels, you can find them under Window. From the swatches panel, you can pick a pre-made gradient swatch. To find Illustrator's gradient swatches, click the three little lines in the corner of the swatches panel, mouse down to Open Swatch Library, then Gradients. You'll find a whole list of different gradient swatches in there. Alternatively, you can just create your own gradient swatch in the gradient panel. Double-click on the fill square and pick a color. Drag that color from the fill square down onto your gradient. To keep my gradients consistent, I usually mouse over this first color, hold Alt, and click and drag across to create a duplicate of it. Then I click and drag the color at the end of the gradient off the slider to get rid of it, and move my duplicate color into its place. Finally, I double click on it to adjust it darker or lighter. I'll expand more on gradients in another video, but I hope that wasn't too complicated to follow. As I mentioned, you can use the Blob Brush to paint an area with a gradient instead of a solid colour. Just select your gradient as your colour and start painting. You'll see that as I paint it appears blue, but as soon as I lift my stylus, you can change the direction of the gradient in the gradient panel. So there's my completed illustration using both the Paintbrush and the Blob Brush tools. I hope this video has been helpful. I know Illustrator can get a bit frustrating sometimes. If you have any questions about these tools, feel free to leave me a comment. And if you're interested in seeing more videos like this, please subscribe.